I don't have a. I still haven't made it to woodshop to turn a gavel. All right. Good evening. It's 7:02 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening and welcome. With that, on to points of pride. Superintendent.
Hello. Welcome to November.
Welcome back, Superintendent.
Thank you. AES had were out and about, you would have seen a number of Halloween parades. Families and the communities came out to cheer for those. Susie Spickle was at Pierce School with Jen Sutton's third grade class. She is from the Harris Center, and they did a segment called Windows into the Wild, and they are raising baby turtles, and they'll be released into the wild this spring. So that's wonderful. The outdoor Lions Learning continues at FES, continues to expand to include more community members. Pam Avery from Francistown Conservation Committee joined in October, and she enjoyed the day so much that she asked to keep coming for each month. And then finally, we have some points of pride from Great Brook. GBS had an outside costumed all-school assembly on Shea Field on Friday, and GBS students and staff lined up across Shea Field, and the AES students were cheered on during their Halloween parade. So a nice across school event for them. And those are our points of pride today.
Thank you, Superintendent. Dr. Ullman. Only if you unmute yourself.
Ever. Okay. Until tonight, I did not realize that Catherine Hecht had been named to the position of Government Finance Advisor for the New Hampshire Municipal Association, which is a really big deal. So I think we can take pride in her
I agree.
elevation.
Thank you. Congratulations, Catherine. Thank you, Dr. Ullman. Okay, any other board members? We can turn it into a sharing circle. Okay, all right, next. Non-public for now or for later? Later? Yeah, oh, sorry. Thank you. Forgot that we moved that. Public comment. So we have reached the first period of public comment of tonight's meeting. Is there any member of the public that would like to address us this evening? Hearing none, seeing none. Okay, with that, that dispends the first period of public comment. We will have another one at the end of the meeting. Do we need a non-public now? No? No? Okay, perfect, great. Okay, so with that, we are on to the consent agenda. There are two items on your consent agenda. The first is sorry, what? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Rich. So consent agenda, there is the school board minutes from October 19th, 2021. And the second item is personnel. These are your co-curricular notifications that were in your packet. Any objection? Catherine?
No objection, just a question. Is
Sure.
it Coach Scott Gracie or Scott Tracy?
I believe it to be Scott Tracy, but I'll let the superintendent and the administration answer that.
Yes. Yeah. So, and just an FYI for you guys. So when you get co-curricular notifications, that doesn't necessarily represent all of the sports that we are offering for that time period. It's just what we have for coaches right now.
So I just wanted to add, I was appreciative that we found a coach for the boys hockey team and make sure it's very public that that program will be moving forward.
Yay.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes, I'll make sure the spelling is corrected on that. Anything else? No objections. Hearing none, seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted with the noted edit to the last name of the new hockey coach. With that, we are on to the superintendent's report and presentation of business. Reopening update.
So we are obviously, I don't know if people are aware that the dashboard I left on vacation and the dashboard went down. So I don't know. I'm not sure what that says. But so we are working on updating that. There was some updates pretty recently. We are holding kind of our own. Obviously, many of you saw the letter that went out today. That's kind of the first substantial uptick that we've had within the district. Across the region, in the public health region, the last update when I saw that update this morning was from the 26th, and that had been 417, I believe, 0.2 cases. So that's still under our 500 threshold. We still continue to have low case numbers across our schools and not very high case numbers across our 9 towns. We met with the monitoring team today, and they didn't recommend that at this point we have any changes. We'll give you an update on testing. We are applying for a CLIA to be a CLIA site, so that there's an application process with that. We are going through that application process right now. The goal for us would be to provide rapid test, so that if somebody came in and was symptomatic, their parents would have the option to say, yes, go ahead. The nurses would then be able to give them a rapid test, and they could either go back to class, or we would know right away that they needed to go home. Now, with that said, it sounds really simple, but the application process is not quite that cut and dry. But we are hoping to try and complete that and get that underway so that we can move on. Also, the nurses have recently been able to begin accessing the vaccination pieces for the state, not by name, but by kind of general areas. And we are kind of working out that, since there's a little bit of trouble since the dashboard isn't being updated. There was an update to the dashboard, like a software update. Things didn't go well, so we're trying to get that sorted out before we and that's a state dashboard. We don't maintain that, but we're trying to get what's going on with that sorted out before we ask our nurses to depend on that data. And I'm happy to the update of as of 11/2, so today was 442 cases per 100,000 over the last 14 days. So happy to answer questions about reopening if you have any. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, we have the learning recovery presentation. Amy Janik.
Thank you for having me to share a little bit of the progress that we've made with implementing our learning recovery plan. If you'll remember, there were 4 recommendations as we researched how to recover recover learning for students who may have lost learning over the pandemic. Those 4 focus areas included creating a supporting learning environment, focusing on acceleration, providing high-intensity tutoring, and expanding learning time for students. So, if you'll remember, the supportive learning environment, that both the need for support in developing a executive functioning skills, and explicit instruction in social and emotional skills were listed as high priority needs by parents and guardians who responded to the district's 21-22 survey, reopening survey. So with that, each of the schools have created plans and to support their students at their levels. So at the elementary level, we've implemented, or they have, I keep thinking of myself as one of the elementary principals, but have implemented a curriculum that was developed a couple of years ago for the elementary schools called First 8 Weeks. This is a curriculum that really builds all students' skills and knowledge with routines and strategies for engaging in learning. So what gets them ready for learning so that they can be present when teachers are teaching them. Additionally, there are 8 staff that we've identified that are working to assess the implementation through staff self-assessments, and using the results of that assessment, they will make revisions to that curriculum because it is 2 years old and we know that there are some glitches with it. The elementary schools are also continuing their work with implementing positive behavior interventions and supports for all students. So this is all tier 1, that core support that all students need to be healthy, positive learners. At the middle school, the 2 schools have established universal teams to oversee their multi-tiered system of support for behavior. So they had one for instruction, and they've now added one for behavior. They're continuing their work with implementing positive behavior interventions and supports in their schools. And the staff have taken, for a second time, a school culture assessment that identifies the strengths and weaknesses in their school culture, how where they see strengths and weaknesses. And from those, the results of that assessment, that second assessment that they've taken, they'll develop an action plan to improve the school culture. At the high school, the staff work together to identify the emotional needs of the students. They have the school-wide self-management rubric. They've made some adjustments to that to address the focus areas that they've identified. This rubric, correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, is used to as a part of the report card at times, and also for students to be able to assess how they're doing with self-management skills and learning preparation. They have also dedicated one staff meeting a month to really focus on strategies for developing students' social and emotional growth. The second component of our recovery plan, learning recovery plan, is to focus on acceleration. And acceleration really focuses not so much on remediation, but helping students, or putting structures in place so that students can access grade level material. So we saw our coaches as being the first line of building staff's skills with acceleration. We have a math and a literacy coach at the elementary level and a math coach at the middle school level. We were not able to secure coaches or find coaches in the other areas. So at the middle school, we have a long-standing working relationship with Fuse to Literacy, and they have a consultant coming and working with both of our middle schools to build and support teachers and work side by side with teachers to build students' summarizing skills, which directly relates to the school goals for reading comprehension and writing at the middle schools. At the high school level, we are and have been looking for a math consultant to come and work with the department. And we'll continue to pursue that to support the math department's work in meeting students' needs. So one of the components, one of the first pieces of work that our coaches have done is identify high impact instructional practices that will improve students' learning and really accelerate student learning. What they identified, there are two practices, particularly for math, but really they apply to all subject areas, is accountable talk, which is really teaching teachers, so they're partnering with teachers to create intentional classroom discussions among the students so that the students are really constructing and making sense of their learning and doing the talking rather than the teachers, because we know that student talk, intentional and targeted student talk, is actually which grows students' understanding more than a teacher talking to a student. That also allows us to know when students are understanding a concept or maybe have misconceptions or misunderstandings or gaps. So our coaches have been really, and teachers have really been embracing this idea of how do we get our students talking more. The other practice that they brought to us that we all know, but they're working with teachers to analyze and understand students, is this concrete pictorial abstract model. And that model allows teachers to really think about the entry points for students to be able to learn grade level content. So as students struggle with multiplication, teachers can hand kids a multiplication problem, or they can give them a visual, where kids can draw it out, or they actually give them those concrete tools to build students' understanding of the content level material. So the third component of our action plan or recovery plan is high intensity tutoring. And quite frankly, it has been an interesting process. While we had hoped to hire 12 tutors for 11 schools, we currently have 4 tutors for our schools. And so we continue to advertise for those positions, but obviously with the workforce struggles, we really turned our attention to being very intentional in creating a structure or a system that can be used whether there's an in-school tutor available for the school or not. So in doing that, we had to look at what we do have. So we worked with Antrim and Pierce, because that's where we placed our tutors, because our coaches were there. And we really worked at what is our entry point in determining how to bring tutoring and which students to bring tutoring to and how to do that. So there are 2 ways that we could do that. One is through the grade level, where what typically happens, so we had to look at what's already happening and know where to insert tutoring. So grade levels, even if there's only 1 teacher, typically you instruct, you watch how the student responds. If they respond great, you keep going. If they don't respond, you adjust instruction. You shift again, you watch how they respond. And you kind of go in this cyclical place. And in our community schools, sometimes this is done by yourself as a teacher. When a student reaches a point where you've gone through that cycle and it's not making a difference, you're not seeing a shift in student learning, you push over to the school level process of going to the instructional support team or response to intervention team. They then look at the data, look at what you're doing, have that conversation, and make a recommendation and create a plan. So we tried pushing into tutoring at the grade level, and it wasn't quite working. And so but we know that that component is really helpful. So we've created not a new system, we've inserted this tutoring system, or this need to look at whole class data, into the IST or RTI model or process. So you've got your students, not just one student, but you could be looking at a group of students. You bring them to the IST, you analyze that data, and really look at the formative assessments, the data from the classroom, and decide, is this a whole class situation? If so, you pool in coaching. Is this a one first time student struggling? Let's try WIN, task intervention, or tutoring if tutoring is available in that school, because we're not going to have tutors in every school. Or is this a student who we've tried different things with tutoring, what have you? We need something more systematic, which would lend itself to Title I or RTI paras. So this is the model that we worked with the principals last week a little bit, and we'll bring back and see what they think, whether this would work, so that we can then bring it to the teachers. Because we're really now realizing, because of the workforce shortage, we really need to tap into that expanded learning time, so that before and after school tutoring is becoming more and more imperative. And so earlier in the school year, I had surveyed all the staff, and we have, at each level, you'll see 20 or 11 or 6 staff available to provide tutoring for kids for before and after school. And then we've allotted a certain amount of money. There was a budget for before and after school tutoring. And so I took that budget and I distributed across all the schools based on enrollment, based on their student enrollment. So at the elementary schools, some schools have 30 hours based on their enrollment, or could potentially provide 30 hours over the course of the year of before and after school tutoring. Some of those elementary schools that have higher enrollment would have more hours, because they're going to have more students to provide tutoring for. So this is the initial formula that we'll use as we start to expand to before and after school tutoring. So when we think about this, the multi-tiered system of support normally has 3 levels. So the first level is for everybody. Second level is for those students who need a little bit of a boost. And then a third tier where they need more very specific structured instruction. So we've added a little bit of a second tier. So in our first tier, we have whole group instruction. We've got small group instruction. Everybody gets that. And everybody gets coaching. Then at the second level, some students will need WIN, or they might need task or intervention, just to clear up misconceptions or go back a step to fill in some missed learning. And that's where tutoring would fit in. And then at the third tier, you'd bring in more specialized supports like RTI paras, Title I, and for middle school and high school, because they don't have that RTI in Title I, we would pull in that before and after school tutoring. And then at the highest level, with more skilled staff, or more, not skilled, because they're all skilled, they all have to be skilled, but have specialized training to provide specific instruction, would be the Title I, the before after school tutoring, and then special educators. So really, the work that we're doing is really to make a shift that moves from time being that constant that we're working around, you know, I've got to get this unit done, to really learning being the constant. And so this is going to really, this is why we've had to work so intentionally to put this system, this tutoring system in place, because we definitely have had some fits and starts. Who should really be getting it? You know, is this somebody who really needs more specialized instruction? But I think that over time, because we're being so intentional, we're better able to have this system continue past when the grant is over. So that is my update. Question?
Any questions? Oh, Janine?
Go ahead.
I noticed there are only 6 tutors at the high school. Is that because you can't, doesn't it have to be, subject specific?
So, that's a good question, and they're not replacing a teacher. So the teacher, yes, they do have to be. So there's some math people that have said that they want to tutor. There are some social studies, and there are some ELA teachers. I do have a tutor up at the high school, and she is working actually more as a literacy, reading, writing in content area, because that's slightly different than needing tutoring in social studies. It's how do you access information? How do you read like a historian? How do you write like a historian? Whoopsie.
Dr. Allman and then Catherine.
Yes, yeah. So I have established that I'll do surveys 3 times a year with the families, students, if they're old enough, staff, to assess the overall implementation. But there's also the student data. So the tutors or the coaches are keeping data around student performance. And then we're going to use NWEA, AIMSweb, and formative assessments, the summative assessments that teachers put together.
Catherine.
Thank you for this presentation. I know I had requested it, maybe several of us did. So looking back at the grant, we had a comprehensive presentation by Dr. Forrest at the time, prior to your tenure, and we have a $2.4 million plan, and it's great that you've reallocated the funds. The workforce shortage is disheartening, but it's everywhere. So can you just...
No, we haven't reallocated. We also budgeted for professional development.
Okay.
And for consultations with other organizations. So we still are advertising for all of these
Okay.
jobs. We have another coach in the pipeline,
Okay.
and we, after this meeting's done, then I'm working on my flyers for tutors
Okay.
to get out there.
Oh, well, that's great that we're still hopeful and we're gonna continue to try. But as we go back in time, some of the costs associated were like for summer planning and professional development. But if the staff wasn't here in that Did that occur? Could that have occurred because we weren't able to secure the staffing?
That did occur. So some of the planning and development was for our current staff to come in and work on priority standards. And so that drove sometimes it drove the work that they started this fall with intentional learning communities, where they have those priority standards and are creating assessments. Some of the money was allocated to the tutoring, and some of the money was also spent up at the high school for the boost, summer boost.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Liz?
Thank you so much for the presentation and the explanation. I'm wondering about the math and literacy coaches that you were talking about. You said you have secured some for the elementary level. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so where are those literacy and math coaches right now?
Yeah.
Which schools are they in?
So they're currently the math coaches at Antrim and the literacy coaches at Bennington. The math coach is transitioning to add Peterborough as well. And each of them have gone to all of the elementary schools to start the conversation. So I was, a Hancock staff was working with one of the literacy coaches the other day. So there's pieces, they have home base, but they're able to get out there a little bit. But we've learned that this moving from place to place to place as a coach does not work. You need a segment at a time. So.
Yeah, I imagine that must be challenging. So thanks again. I know that, with this kind of lack of tutors that we're dealing with right now, I'm curious to know what the parameters are that you're looking for in a tutor. Like, what qualifications are you looking for?
Really good question. So we have both certified tutors and paraprofessional tutors. So we're hoping, we want the tutors to have expertise with math and literacy instruction. The paraprofessionals they've had experience with being in a classroom, have been substitute teachers, that kind of thing. So they're familiar with our curriculum. This mask is driving me crazy. Sorry. Let me try. Anyway, so they're familiar or quick to learn. I spent my day today really working with them on lesson planning and goal setting and really honing those skills. So we have some training that we can do as well. So, yeah.
Of course, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sorry, I have so many questions. So I'm also wondering what your thoughts are on, if we're asking kids to stay for extra time during the day, how that might affect a kid with an IEP who maybe has a diagnosis with an attention issue or something like that, and how we would kind of work around that and based on what's available.
Right.
I know that we're dealing with some deficits in staff and
So the
yeah.
advantage of what I really am pleased with the before and after school tutoring, it is the school-based staff that are doing that. So they know those students, so they know how to take a break to get back to learning, how to stand up, sit down, move around. They have the strategies and they already have the relationships, because with tutoring, that relationship is critical. So Temple kids will be working with Temple staff.
Right.
Peterborough kids, Peterborough staff.
And this is being implemented now?
It will be.
It will,
We had to
okay.
get that. We
Yes,
have
the
to get
piece.
that firmed up with principals because they ultimately have to implement it. I can't be everywhere and it won't last if I'm the one doing it. And it's a balance. There's a lot to address.
Of course, I'm sure. Yeah, this is like another education system within an education system. So I appreciate the complexity of what you're working on. So thank you.
Dr. Kriebel, and then Kevin.
Thank you for the presentation, Amy. Did I understand correctly when you said, especially for the before and after school tutoring, that you had set amount of hours and you were dividing that up by population? Did I understand that correctly?
a set financial amount.
So I guess my question is, wouldn't it make more sense to identify the need first in each school and divide it up that way? Because you're assuming that each school has the same need per population, which I'm going to argue is probably not a true statement. To me,
Yeah.
it seems like it makes more sense to identify the students and then proportionate the funds that way than to just straight up do it on a population base.
I hear you. I had a similar thought, Dr. Kriebel. I think I needed to start somewhere and see who is going to access, because it may be I could allocate to schools with more need, but they may not access it. So let's see where, oopsie, yes, go ahead.
So I agree with Amy that it's a starting place. I think the other piece that we are working hard to clarify is who is the most in need of tutoring, right? And one of the things that we've learned is the tutoring is highly connected to classroom work. So it's while we can look at NWEA and we can look at state assessments, it's really classroom-based assessments where we need to be making our decisions for tutoring. So with that, if you think about, we structure, our instruction is grouped into units. So for tutoring, we're leaning more towards identifying students based on a pre-assessment at the beginning of a unit, and then the tutoring would focus on specific content and skills related to that unit. So determining need is a little so that shifts things. And so tutoring could last, say, 2 weeks to 6 weeks for kids. But if we're talking about most in need of the neediest kids, while all kids potentially will have access to tutoring, the focus of tutoring is different. So if we have students who are, 2 grade levels below, tutoring is not going to be a magic key for them. It could be an additional piece, but that's where we need.
So I think, Amy alluded to this at the end of her presentation, and that is the intentionality of the planning, and how does this fit into our system. So we have a system to try to address students who are a year behind or 2 years behind. What we're finding as a result of, so a lot of that depends. And Ben is not here, so this is going to be my short version on if, does the student have a challenge that stops their learning, whether that be physical or cognitive or behavioral. And that is one type of system. What we're finding with students who are in the recovery phase more and need to be propped up because they weren't able to learn something is that they don't necessarily need the same intensity. What they need is that acceleration, that supportive learning environment, and the tutoring to catch back up to where they were before. If there are other more significant learning issues, then that is going to need a different type of system. And that intentionality of working this tutoring and the extended learning into our present multi-tiered system of support is so important for long-term sustainability, or else, because we never want to be in a situation where we just throw everything at the child and we hope something sticks. We want to make those educational decisions with data, with intentionality, and then we want to make sure if a student no longer needs the tutoring or no longer needs the extended day, that they're able to move back into a more traditional schedule. Did that help?
Kevin. Sorry, sure, go ahead.
And so as a follow-up, I guess my next question kind of begets what you just said is how are these people being identified? Are they self-identifying? Are they being parent identified? Are they being teacher identified? All of the above?
Right. Currently, it is,
And I might have missed it while I was out
That's
answering the
all right.
page. Sorry.
Amy's slide was really good about kind of that that decision making and,
That's all right.
and making like what do we really need to do in this situation. So for instance,
If it was covered, Kimberly, I can just go back and you can send me the slides later. You don't,
did it?
Okay.
so maybe it was just
Okay.
Yeah.
not
It's,
deep enough.
So you're actually hitting on the very piece that we've been working on, because the systems that we have in place right now are really systems that are set up to identify students who are really struggling and have fallen significantly behind. And so our NWA data, our Ames-Web state tests, that data works really well for identifying students who need a much more significant intervention. So we're trying to look at that system, which we have in place, because we don't want to have like a separate system that's disconnected, because that becomes too hard to manage. But how can we look at the system that's already in place, but bring in this new element? And it's an element that is based on classroom-based assessment. So again, I gave the example of like a pre-assessment to a unit. And it would be the data from that we would use to identify the specific students who would benefit from tutoring during the length of that unit. So we're looking at potentially like 6 weeks. And some of those students may only need it for a couple weeks. Some students may need it for all 6 weeks. So teacher-driven, but coming to the team that each school has in place.
So at any given time, we have students in need of support. Now, they might be in need of support because, health is really hard. Or they might be in need of support because of a variety of cognitive, behavioral, or emotional reasons. So if you consider we have this bulk of students that are in need of support, we have what's called IST, or every building has a team of people where this information goes, and that could come from teachers, it could come from a parent, it can come from anywhere, really. It goes to that, and then what they do is they look at the data around that student. What is the teacher saying? What is the data telling us? And then they could fall into any of that tier. So for instance, if we found out, we've got 5 people in this one class that everybody's really struggling, and then we look at the class data, and well, actually all of the students in this class are struggling, or a majority of the students, that might be a situation where we're going to support that teacher with the coaching and get another adult in there to help them, okay, I need 5 different ways to teach this so that everybody can access their learning. It could be that, it has been individual, momentary kind of, I really don't understand quadratic equations, which by the way, I don't either, but so let's get that particular particular students some high intensity tutoring for 2 or 3 weeks, help them understand quadratic equations and let them move on from there. Or it could be WIN or TASK. It could be more intense and need tutoring for after school. It could be more intense and need Title I intervention or RTI, para intervention, and push in during the school day. So I think that identifying those students, we already had a way in which we were identifying students that were struggling. What we needed to do was put in an effective and efficient way for students and teachers and parents to access that IST. That we needed to work with. We had to find a way to, as Amy already alluded to put that into the system that was already in place, or else we would be trying to run 2 parallel systems. And then what would happen is sometimes the students over here that were suggested for tutoring may actually have a bigger issue. So now they have to go back to a different group. And that's just not an efficient or effective way to try and provide long-term support or long-term success for students.
Kevin, and then Dr. Ullman, and then Alan.
My memory from when we talked about the Learning Recovery Program at the point that it was presented was that we were talking about a large number of students, very, very large number of students, a high percentage of our students who would need some sort of intervention and support. And while it makes sense to me that you wouldn't want to have 2 systems operating side by side, it strikes me that the system may not be set up to handle the scale of need that is being pushed into it. I'm wondering if you're encountering that as a problem at all. And one of the things that a specific manifestation of that would be, I look at the number 6 at the high school for expanded learning time, and I think, wow, the number I thought back in June we were going to have to address would vastly exceed the capabilities of 6.
Part of that is because that's how many people are.
I get that, but I'm wondering how this possibly could be working.
Well, without a doubt, it's being compromised right now because we have not been able to secure a math coach for the high school or a literacy coach for the high school or any full-time. We had a part-time math tutor. So that has hampered our ability to fully implement our initial plan as presented, as it has in the other buildings. So Amy shared those numbers. That was from an initial survey. Since that survey has done, we have further clarified with building principals exactly what this will look like. And so there is the possibility when we go back and present what this looks like, when we bring clarity to teachers, maybe we'll have more people interested. But again, we are still advertising for those positions. And so we'll have to wait and see. As far as like the large number, remember that tutoring was only one piece of it. So when you have a large percentage of students who are not making the growth that they need to make, then we have always got to start with what's happening in the classroom, right? What's the core instruction that's happening? And so we have spent time looking at the content and looking at resources and identifying what are the priority standards, because not all standards are equal. We need to identify those priority standards. We need to focus on those priority standards. So that was one piece. That work has started. Coaching. So we have coaching in place for elementary and some in for middle school, but that's the next piece. So our coaches are working with classroom teachers as well as specialists. And again, so that's on really looking at how are we delivering that instruction and how can we fine tune it to make it more engaging for students, to get them more involved and active in their learning, and implementing strategies that will have a high impact, as Amy described earlier. So there are other pieces beyond the tutoring. So the tutoring brings in another element for sure.
But when I look at,
But the tutoring can't be provided to 40% of our
Right.
student body. It's just
I
we
look
don't
at-
have the
when I
manpower.
look at the coaching, and then I look at the tutoring, and then I look at expanded learning time, the high school really doesn't look like the high school's getting much treatment. Is that fair to say?
Well, we haven't been able to provide, right, we haven't put the people power into place that could really
Right.
be helping it. And they've got aggressive, it's something we're talking about because they have aggressive school goals and the plans incorporated these supports that we have not been able to put into place, which is why we are looking at, since we haven't been able to secure a math coach, can we find a good math consultant that at least could come in periodically to provide support?
Dr. Ullman, and then Alan, and then Rich.
Like Dr. Kriebel, I would love to have a set of these slides sent to me. Also, could there be a glossary? If there were a test on these acronyms, I would not do well. And yeah, no, this is, Amy, this is not you. This is a condition of all professional educators. They talk in these terms.
Alan, then Rich.
Hi, I know it's somewhat early in the school year, and this is a very dynamic environment or process you're trying to put in place, but I was wondering, from a high level, your assessment of, from a planning and execution standpoint, where are we now versus where we should be? And if there's a big difference, do you feel comfortable we're going to be able to meet the goals that we should be able to meet? Generally
So-
speaking.
So I'm actually, are you guys good with me answering this one? So I am actually, my goals,
Yes.
or,
learn.
okay. Yeah, so, what's helpful is that my goals with recovery, yes, I like to look at where I was or where we were and where we are now, and what we have put into place is extraordinary. So if we're able to continue, even with some of the structures, with limited structures, at least from a coaching standpoint, I think we will absolutely meet our goals. I think that the other element, as teachers become more, it's a tough time right now, right? They're trying to get their classrooms established and whatnot. As that settles, they become more available potentially for tutoring, but there are some tutors that I wasn't able to get because they couldn't be around children that weren't vaccinated. But once they said we reached a certain level of vaccination, they could be here. So there are variables that I don't know, being the optimist that I am, that might be removed.
What you need to be.
We have to meet those goals by the end of the 2-year period, because the grant is gone, and this is too important, I think. I think this is a chance for us to make major shifts in how we work with children and how we support children, or access supports for children.
Okay, thank you.
Rich.
Thank you. So I've got three questions, I guess. The first is the school culture surveys that you referenced early in your presentation. Did any of those involve surveying students about their perceptions of the school culture?
No.
I may ask you a follow-up question about that at some point. Second question is the source of funds for all of these efforts requires what I think the regulation calls substantial and meaningful consultation with stakeholders. So did we substantially and meaningfully consult with stakeholders, specifically including parents, on developing this?
So we actually sent out, I don't know if you remember, as part of the whole, way back in May, we started sending those surveys out, which is how we knew that the priority for parents particularly was the social, emotional, and school environment piece. So we started way back in, was it April or May? With our surveys in consultation and follow-up.
And the last piece is, when you were referencing this sort of people you wanted to hire as teachers, you used the word certified. Tutors don't need to be certified teachers, right? So if we've only been able to fill a third of our tutoring spots, at what point do we get to the point where we say a properly educated but non-certified tutor is better than no tutor?
Absolutely. That's the one that's in the waiting for me. He's a math tutor that I want yesterday.
So we are prepared.
We're there.
We're there.
Yes.
Will the posted job descriptions be altered?
Skilled. I should have said skilled. That hold the skill set to address the needs of the students as opposed to certified, because it is not about certification at all.
All right, thank you.
Liz.
I just have another question about future planning. This might be too futuristic for now because I know you guys are dealing with immediate concerns and trying to fill staff vacancies and things like that. As far as planning for the summer and additional time that would potentially be available, what do you see happening there in terms of planning? And the reason that I'm asking is, there's a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons that I'm asking about summertime is that if we are planning to do things in the summer, we need to know now, because we have to really get that message out to the communities so that they can plan, because people plan their summers like now. And so also twofold, if resources are limited by the time summer rolls around and the smaller schools still don't have those staff issues resolved or people willing to work, would you consider offering spaces in the schools that do have those resources for the smaller outlying schools in different communities?
So our expectation was to provide programming for all students at all elementary schools, and then at middle and at high school. What happened was there was crunch time, and so we put together what we could, given the time frame. But our plan at the elementary level is we know our Title I program works. We want to be able to, we can't replace what we do. We have to supplement. So we need to create that and then also have Title I as a supplement to that program. So I'm not sure where that will be held, but it will be available for all students for sure. And yes. And I really, who qualify? Yes, sorry. And I would love to make it open for everybody, honestly, but we'll see. And then I also know that we really have to get a jump on planning that early because people do have to make summer program plans for their kids and vacation plans, and that starts early. So,
Thank you. And I do think that people realize this is important, and I think the more we can talk about that now and have those conversations and build those relationships with parents, and I know I've heard the superintendent and the assistant superintendent talk about how important those relationships are, and really helping them understand. That's what it takes is time.
sure.
So thank you, Amy. I appreciate it.
Dick,
I really appreciate the coaching aspect, particularly in literacy. I've seen how positive an impact that can have on students. Obviously coming from staff to students, but definitely a positive impact that has a long-term effect. My concern really focuses on math and coaching, because I've heard a number of times how we provide all kinds of, we'll call it coaching, for teachers in math throughout the district. And and at least from my view, it hasn't had a major impact in changing the direction of our math scores across the district. So that's a real key element, and it would be interesting to see what coaching impact may have on classroom teachers. The piece that I see that is a nightmare is implementing a program like this that's spread across all the schools. It's an impossible task to meet the needs of all of our students when they're dispersed out in the number of schools that we have with the limited resources. It's impractical. It can't be done. So if we have to look at our resources and what limited resources we have, where are the highest needs? Let's focus on those and see if we can make an impact there. Because I'm sorry, you can't get out to everyone. So when we talk about having a consolidation of instruction, it comes from a consolidation of students. And there's where you can have your major impact. When all of those students who are at a grade level are identified within one building, you can certainly have a major impact on providing tutoring at some point for those students within the day. Remember, every time a kid gets help, that student's not getting something else. So what are they missing to get the support that they need in the basic academic area? And that's a real challenge. I'm not aware of anyone who's really found the answer to that challenge within an academic day. I'll be curious for the numbers of before school and after school students who choose to take that option, or parents choose to have the kids take that option. That's a real struggle for kids who've been playing school all day, to play a little earlier and play a little longer. That's a real challenge, particularly for younger kids. So I'll be curious to see how many choose it and what the impact might be if they choose that option. So those figures will be interesting. But the literacy, I tip my hat to you. The more we do that for our staff, the greater impact we will have on students in this district.
thank you, Dick. Rich?
So I'm sure these plans are in a constant state of revision and, take what you learn and you revise them again, and so forth, right? I want to go back to the consultation piece. I'm looking at the DOE guidance document on this, and it defines meaningful consultation, and then it lists the sort of artifacts that they might want provided during the monitoring period of the grant. And it says, include but not limited to agendas, summary notes and minutes, sign-in sheets, participant lists, call logs, and presentation materials, PowerPoints, and handouts, which to me implies a different level of consultation than a survey. And
So we'll
as we
certainly,
know, some things we do are under scrutiny, and I would think if we're going to need to provide such artifacts during the consultation, during the monitoring period of the grant,
so we'll definitely be providing redacted minutes from IST and those pieces, as well as for meetings with parents. You should know that what you're reading from was released after the grant was due.
And I'll
Right,
point
but
out
it's
that
about
I'll point
during-
out as somebody that drafts stuff like that, it says but not limited to, which you can drive a truck through from a compliance point of view.
Sure, but this is during the monitoring period, so it wasn't for the initial application. What they're saying is during the monitoring period, which is the next 2 years, they're going to be looking for evidence of meaningful consultation. And I guess I'm questioning a little bit whether the surveys we did, which I took as a parent, constitute meaningful consultation.
Thank you, Rich. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right. Thank you, Amy. And others. All right. With that, we are on to the monthly events calendar.
So the monthly event calendar is on page 7. We are in the first week of November. Is there anything else we have?
Kevin? Yep.
So I would say we usually are out.
About right.
And then December is also, I can't remember the word December. So we have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to make up that first week. Is there anything on those days? First, second, or the third? The week of the 6th? The week of the 13th?
The SAC, the selectmen want to meet on the 16th at 7 is their request.
Okay, so, the strategic plan has several major, the strategic plan committee, or it has.
Uh-huh.
So that only gives you guys an hour to meet, so.
I'll work with Joe. I'll see if he's,
Do you want to start strategic plan earlier?
sorry. Oh, well then we can maybe find a, sure. So if you can cover that one? Okay. That'll work then. On the 16th of, no, there isn't one in November. Only on the 16th of December. Yep, perfect.
Finally.
Sorry, Rich?
So, in the past, you've had a nearly violent objection to combining second and third grade.
Yes.
But you've had to do that this year at FES. And I'm just wondering why you combine second and third grade there and not third and fourth.
That is not, that's not, Carrie, is there an error there? Because that does not look accurate to me. So FES is a K1-2 situation, 3-4 situation.
Thank you.
Thank you for picking that up, because I didn't notice it when I looked at it.
Thank you, Rich. Dr. Ullman?
Two observations. We continue to have 3 of the 8 elementary schools with enrollments under 50, and each of those schools teach at least 5 grades. Also, any predictions about a vast emigration away from the public schools are contradicted by the the totals for the current academic year 2055 for all of the grades and all of the schools, which is only 4 down from the previous academic year's enrollment.
Great. Next is reports. Teachers representative? Not tonight. Okay. Strategic plan, that's me. The strategic plan committee met. We had presentations from all of the different subcommittees who provided updates to the board on where they were at and what their processes were and what that looked like. That was a pretty good discussion. There was a request by the wellness committee, as there was no wellness committee last time, for a little bit more direction on what that would look like. So we have made sure that there's a board member assigned to that. I had failed to appoint one after Rob Short's resignation. So we've now resolved that concern with them. However, if you are a member of the public and you are listening to the live feed tonight, and you are interested in serving on the Wellness Committee, they would love to have you. And I will put that pitch out there too, though some of our other committees are, I would describe as full or well subscribed. We are still looking for community members to participate in our strategic planning process, and some of those committees would love to have a few more members from the community. We will put out that, re-release our request to our websites with our survey instrument, so that you can indicate to us your interest in doing so. I encourage you to please participate, if you can, in those subcommittees, as we do want this plan to truly reflect the district. So that's my update on strategic plan. Equity.
We were
Rich.
not able to meet. We will be meeting at the end of this.
Thank you. Selectmen's advisory also goes back to me. We met the other night. That was another good meeting. There was discussion of the budget's always talked about. There was a discussion of an initial discussion around some changing demographics around the Conval School District, which always results in the question of available housing for said changing demographics, which is always an entertaining discussion with the members of the select boards. They too showed some interest in wanting us to engage community members and others on the strategic plan, so there was a good overlap of discussion with them on that. I think that was pretty much what we covered. Oh yeah, and then the number, yeah, that's fine. Yep. Policy committee, Catherine.
So the policy committee met this evening. Tonight you will see 3 policies up for first read. So if you have any questions, comments, or feedback on those policies, please reach out to us before it goes to second read. So policy IGE, DAF, and EEAEA, which I want to sing every time I say that. We worked on policy GBCD, background investigations and criminal histories check. That will be going to legal review. And policy JICD, which we adopted as part of our legal requirements over the summer. There was some hard work done on that. We did have some updates, so we will be bringing that back for a revision, readopt next board meeting. And we will be rescinding JIA and JIC as they now fall under JICD.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and the members of the policy committee for your work on all of that. Okay, with that, we are on to old business. The legislative update is our standing item under old business. Those LSRs are still slowly being turned into draft legislation and bills that will be introduced into the House and the Senate. Again, there's no shortage of stuff that will potentially impact the district. There's 200 or so LSRs that are being tracked by the New Hampshire School Board Administration, and that Kimberly and I had already gone through as well ahead of their analysis of those to try to get an idea of the ones that might have an impact on us, either from a educational standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, or other factors. So obviously the NHSBA will keep you apprised in their regular emails that they send out of the ones they'll track, and we'll bring the big ones to your attention as well as they start turning into draft legislation. Anything else on legislative updates? Okay. With that, the next one under old business is fifth board goal. So I had sent this out to you all. You also should have a copy of it. When we did board goals, there was the 4 that we agreed to, and then there was the question of whether there should be a fifth. That task was assigned to Kevin and Stephen, who then reported back that they had 2 options. One, I appear to have lost. I'll bring up my other one. That either don't have a fifth goal, or that the board will continue to support the district's efforts to implement preschool for all. Alan.
I think on preschool, there are some people that support it, there are some people that don't support it, but that's not really the point. The point is that the goals that we have now, the first 4 goals, are very high-level goals. There's strategic plan, there's the budget and finance, communication, learning recovery, and reopening. I believe that the preschool is just one of many, many initiatives that take place within the environment of the Conval School District. And as such, we really don't, it doesn't belong as a board goal. It's not at the right level to be a board goal. So I would suggest that we do not have a 5th goal.
Thank you, Alan. Any opposing opinion on whether we should adopt a 5th goal and or what that should be based on this? Catherine.
I second what Alan said. I think we, at this time, should not have a 5th goal.
Okay. Thanks. Superintendent.
As the superintendent, am I to take this as a backtracking of the support for preschool?
Not by a long shot.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
That's a hard. No. I don't believe that. That's not Alan's intent at all, or our intent. That's right. That's it. Just those 4, and then walk away.
I think it's unanimous.
All right. So there's no 5th goal, right? Okay. Fantastic. With that, new business. You have 3 first read policies in your packet. They are IGE, parental objections to specific course material, DAF, administration of federal grant funds, and EEAEA. There it is. You really do have to say it like bingo. Mandatory drug and alcohol testing for school bus drivers and contracted carriers. Those are in your packets. Please review those. If you have comments, please get those to Catherine so that they can be dealt with. I'm also going to take this opportunity under new business to yield to Dick Dunning, who wants to raise an issue relative to sports, I believe specifically at the middle school. Dick?
Yeah, just a question. I received a letter from a parent wondering why we were not having B team, I believe it was basketball, in the middle schools. And the understanding from what I read was the parent was told it was a budgetary item, and that doesn't make sense to me. So I'm a real advocate for us continuing to offer as many sports programs as we possibly can. So could I get some clarification on whether there's a reason why we're not going to have B teams?
So I'm not sure why they were told that it was budgetary.
I don't know either.
Right. So I do think it has taken us it's been quite an effort to actually find coaching staff this year. So, but I do believe that problem has now been resolved. I'm getting a thumbs up from the gallery. So that problem has now been resolved. And I believe those parents were contacted. Yep. Okay.
That's just a portion of the school board request that I sent as to identify what sports are available at what level of the school. Correct?
So I know that there are several school board requests in my queue.
Okay, you'll get to it.
Thanks. And I just, So I'm down to 875 emails right now. So, and that's significant progress.
Just a prioritization problem. Okay.
Well, for one request,
I can reprioritize to answer that question.
so one request answered favorably. Thank you.
You can check that one off. Anything else under any other items under new business before we move into the next period of public comment? Hearing none, seeing none. We are now at our second period of public comment. If any member of the public would like to address the board, you may do so at this time. Please raise your hand to be recognized by the chair. You will be provided a period of 2 minutes. Please step up and push the button so that your microphone is unmuted. Please introduce yourself and say where you're from, and then I will start your timer. Again, you'll have 2 minutes.
I'm Selena White from Temple. I am here because I'm concerned about the vaccination of our kids to be able to go to public school. And I know that it's not something right now, but I want to bring it up because I feel like it is going to be a topic, and I think it needs to be something that parents should be able to talk about. And I just am concerned about this because I don't think that it will be the right move. It's already happening in other states. And today, what brought it to my attention was I got an email from Manana Community Hospital telling us it's going to be available soon. So that's why I feel like the talk about it will come up sooner than later. And it had mentioned that it already had a over 90% success rate of a vaccine given to kids that hasn't even been given out yet. And it also said that it had a high effectiveness rate about a vaccine that has not already been given out to children yet. And to me, this is a little concerning because we start with our masks and then it will go to vaccinations. And I think that it will be an even bigger issue. And you guys talked tonight about being able to find staff, and talked about how staff might be scared because they don't want to work with children who aren't vaccinated. But I also think there are a lot of educators out there, myself included, that may not want to be in the education field, in the public education field, because they themselves don't want to be vaccinated or don't. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to show up tonight.
Man.
Superintendent.
Ms. White, would you if you can just wait till the end of the meeting, I can give you some information about vaccinations in the state of New Hampshire and in schools.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Hearing none, seeing none. Approval of manifests.
So I certify the manifest listed below totaling $2,121,591.58 have been reviewed by me and found to be proper charges against Kentucky Valley School District for goods and or services received and have been properly processed prior to the submittal to the school board.
I move we accept the manifest as read.
I second it.
Moved by Dick, second by Jim. Discussion. Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained.
Everyone's here.
The manifest is approved. With that, do we have a non-public tonight? Yes? Yes.
Yes, but can I have 2 minutes so I can?
You can. Yep,
No?
we'll take a 2-minute recess and then we'll go into non-public. There'll be